The relentless rain pounded against the windows of Lily Martinez's tiny apartment in the heart of Chicago. The young woman sat on her threadbare couch, her delicate hands trembling as she held a crumpled letter. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the raindrops that had soaked her clothes during her long walk home from the diner where she worked. How could this happen? Lily whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the storm outside. The letter, written in elegant handwriting on expensive stationery, bore the seal of the prestigious Blackwood family. Its contents were as cold as the rain that battered her windows. Miss Martinez, we regret to inform you that your relationship with our son, James Blackwood, must come to an end. Your humble background and lack of social standing make you an unsuitable match for a member of our esteemed family. We kindly request that you cease all contact with James immediately. Sincerely, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. Lily's mind raced back to the magical night 6 months ago when she had first met James. It had been a typically busy evening at Joe's diner, where Lily worked tirelessly to make ends meet. She had been rushing to clear a table when she collided with a tall, handsome man in an expensive suit. "I'm so sorry," Lily had exclaimed, mortified as she watched coffee spill all over the stranger's pristine white shirt. But instead of anger, she was met with a dazzling smile. "No harm done," the man had said, his blue eyes twinkling with amusement. "I'm James, by the way. James Blackwood." From that moment on, Lily's life had transformed into a fairy tale. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, James had pursued her relentlessly, showering her with affection and introducing her to a world she had only dreamed of. For the first time in her life, Lily felt truly loved and cherished. But now, as she sat in her dingy apartment, clutching the letter that shattered her dreams, Lily realized how naive she had been. The Blackwoods were one of the wealthiest families in Chicago, with a lineage that stretched back generations. How could she, a simple waitress with no family to speak of, ever hope to be accepted into their world? A knock at the door startled Lily from her reverie. Her heart leaped, hoping against hope that it might be James, coming to tell her that his parents' letter was a mistake. With trembling hands, she opened the door, only to find her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, standing there with a concerned expression. "Lily, dear," I heard crying. "Is everything all right?" the old woman asked, her kind eyes taking in Lily's tear-stained face and disheveled appearance. Lily wanted to lie, to put on a brave face, but the weight of her heartbreak was too much to bear. She collapsed into Mrs. Thompson's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "They don't want me, Mrs. Thompson," she choked out between sobs. "James's family, they say I'm not good enough for him." Mrs. Thompson gently guided Lily back into the apartment, closing the door behind them. She sat the young woman down on the couch and held her hands, her weathered face etched with sympathy. "Oh, my dear girl," she said softly. "I've seen the way that young man looks at you. If he lets his family dictate his heart, then he doesn't deserve you." Lily shook her head, her long dark hair falling in front of her face. "But they're right, aren't they? I'm just a waitress. I have no family, no money, no education. How could I ever fit into their world?" Mrs. Thompson's eyes flashed with a sudden fierceness. "Now you listen to me, Lily Martinez. You are worth more than all the Blackwoods' money put together. You have a heart of gold and a strength they couldn't begin to understand. Don't you ever let anyone make you feel less than you are." As Lily looked into her neighbor's determined face, she felt a small spark of defiance ignite within her. Mrs. Thompson was right. She might not have been born into wealth and privilege, but she had survived hardships that would have broken lesser souls. She had pulled herself up from nothing, working tirelessly to build a life for herself. With a deep breath, Lily stood up, wiping away her tears. "You're right, Mrs. Thompson. I won't let them break me. If James truly loves me, he'll stand up to his family. And if he doesn't? She paused, her voice growing stronger. Then I'll find a way to show them all what I'm made of. Little did Lily know that her words would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of the Blackwood family and reveal secrets long buried in the past. As Mrs. Thompson left, promising to check on Lily in the morning, the young woman felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. She walked to the window, watching the rain continue to fall over the city. In that moment, she made a silent vow to herself. She would not only survive this heartbreak but emerge stronger than ever. Across town, in the opulent Blackwood mansion, James paced back and forth in his father's study, his handsome face contorted with anger and disbelief. "How could you do this?" he demanded, waving the copy of the letter they had sent to Lily. "You had no right to interfere in my relationship." Richard Blackwood, a distinguished man in his 60s, sat behind his massive oak desk, his face an impassive mask. "We did what was necessary, son. That girl is not one of us. She would never fit into our world, and you know it." James slammed his fist on the desk, causing the crystal decanter of scotch to rattle. "I love her, father. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" A flicker of emotion passed across Richard's face, quickly replaced by his usual stern expression. "Love is a luxury we cannot afford, James. Our family has a legacy to uphold, responsibilities that go beyond personal desires. You will thank us for this one day." As James stormed out of the study, slamming the door behind him, he didn't notice the troubled look that passed between his parents. Elizabeth Blackwood, an elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair, turned to her husband with worry etched on her face. "Richard, are you sure we're doing the right thing?" "I've never seen James so upset." Richard sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older than his years. "We have no choice, Elizabeth. If James knew the truth, if any of them knew." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Elizabeth nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of the secret they had carried for so many years. But what if it all comes out? What if Lily starts asking questions? Richard's eyes hardened with determination. "Then we'll deal with it. Whatever it takes to protect this family and our reputation." As the Blackwood mansion fell into an uneasy silence, the storm outside intensified, as if nature itself was reflecting the turmoil that was about to engulf both Lily and the Blackwoods. Little did any of them know that the ties binding them were far more complex and unbreakable than they could have ever imagined. In her small apartment, Lily finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, unaware that her dreams of love and acceptance were about to collide with a past she never knew existed. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the rain-soaked city, the stage was set for a drama that would test the limits of love, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. James, unable to sleep, found himself driving through the empty streets of Chicago as the sun rose. His heart ached for Lily, remembering the joy in her eyes when he had first taken her to dinner at one of the city's finest restaurants. She had been so nervous, worried about using the wrong fork or saying the wrong thing. But as the evening progressed, her natural charm and quick wit had won over even the snobbiest waiter. He pulled over, realizing he had unconsciously driven to Joe's diner. The closed sign hung in the window, but James could almost see Lily inside, her radiant smile lighting up the room as she moved gracefully between tables. "I won't give up on us, Lily," he whispered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "I promise." As the city began to wake, neither Lily nor James could have predicted the storm that was about to break over their lives, a tempest of hidden truths, long-buried secrets, and a love that would be tested to its very limits. Back at the Blackwood mansion, Richard sat alone in his study, an old photograph clutched in his trembling hands. In it, a young woman with a striking resemblance to Lily smiled back at him, her eyes filled with a love and trust that he had betrayed so many years ago. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the photograph, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "I'm so sorry." The sun climbed higher in the sky, promising a new day filled with possibilities and dangers. For Lily Martinez and the Blackwood family, it would be a day that would change everything, a day when the past and present would collide, and the foundations of their worlds would be shaken to the core. The morning sun struggled to break through the gray clouds that hung over Chicago, mirroring the somber mood that had settled over Lily Martinez. She moved mechanically through her tiny apartment, preparing for another day at Joe's diner. As she tied her apron, her eyes fell on the crumpled letter from the Blackwoods, still lying on her coffee table like a silent accusation. With a sudden surge of determination, Lily grabbed the letter and shoved it into her bag. "I won't let them define me," she muttered, squaring her shoulders as she stepped out into the damp morning air. As Lily walked to work, her mind raced with thoughts of James. Had he known about the letter? Was he trying to contact her? She had turned off her phone the night before, unable to bear the thought of seeing his name on the screen and not being able to answer. The familiar neon sign of Joe's diner came into view, and Lily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the long day ahead. As she pushed open the door, the smell of coffee and bacon enveloped her, bringing a small measure of comfort. "Lily! Thank goodness you're here," Joe, the owner, called out from behind the counter. His usually jovial face was creased with worry. "We've got a situation." Lily hurried to tie her apron, concern evident in her voice. "What's wrong, Joe?" The older man ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Martha called in sick, and we're short-staffed. I've got a big party coming in for breakfast, some charity event organizers. I hate to ask, but could you pull a double shift today?" For a moment, Lily hesitated. The thought of a long, grueling day of work after her emotional night was daunting. But then she remembered the Blackwoods' letter, their dismissal of her as nothing more than a simple waitress. A fierce pride welled up inside her. "Of course, Joe," she said, forcing a smile. "I've got this." As the morning rush began, Lily threw herself into her work with a fervor that surprised even herself. She moved between tables with grace and efficiency, her smile never faltering even as she balanced trays laden with steaming plates and fresh coffee. It was nearing noon when the bell above the door chimed, announcing the arrival of new customers. Lily glanced up, her practiced welcome dying on her lips as she saw who had entered. James Blackwood stood in the doorway, his normally impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. Dark circles under his eyes suggested a sleepless night, and his gaze darted around the diner until it locked onto Lily. Behind him, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the modest surroundings, stood his parents, Richard and Elizabeth Blackwood. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Lily felt her heart pounding in her chest, a mix of love, anger, and confusion washing over her. James took a step forward, his eyes pleading, but before he could speak, Richard Blackwood's commanding voice filled the diner. "Miss Martinez, we need to speak with you. Privately." The other patrons in the diner fell silent, sensing the tension in the air. Joe emerged from the kitchen, his protective instincts kicking in as he moved to stand beside Lily. "Is everything all right here, Lily?" he asked, eyeing the Blackwoods suspiciously. Lily took a deep breath, drawing strength from Joe's presence. "It's okay, Joe. I can handle this." She turned to the Blackwoods, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm working right now. Whatever you have to say can wait until my shift is over." Elizabeth Blackwood stepped forward, her elegant features softening as she took in Lily's determined stance. "Please, my dear. What we have to discuss, it can't wait. It's about your past, your family." Lily felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath her feet. Her family? She had grown up in the foster system, bounced from home to home, never knowing anything about her biological parents. How could the Blackwoods possibly know anything about her family? James moved closer, his voice low and urgent. "Lily, please. I didn't know about the letter, I swear. When I found out what they'd done, we need to talk. There's so much you don't know. The diner had gone completely silent now, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Lily looked around, suddenly acutely aware of the spectacle they were creating. With a resigned sigh, she untied her apron. Joe, I'm sorry, but I need to take my break now. Can you cover for me? Joe nodded, concern etched on his kind face. Take all the time you need, kid. We've got your back. Lily led the Blackwoods to a secluded booth in the back of the diner. As they settled into the cracked vinyl seats, the contrast between Lily's simple uniform and the Blackwoods' designer clothes couldn't have been more stark. Richard Blackwood cleared his throat, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Miss Martinez, Lily, what we're about to tell you may come as a shock. But I want you to know that I never meant for things to turn out this way. Lily's eyes narrowed, her patience wearing thin. What are you talking about, Mr. Blackwood? What could you possibly know about my family? Richard exchanged a loaded glance with his wife before continuing. Lily, 25 years ago, I had an affair. It was brief, but it resulted in a child, a daughter. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Lily processed his words. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. What are you saying? Elizabeth reached across the table, her manicured hand covering Lily's trembling one. My dear, we believe that you are that child. You are Richard's daughter. A roaring filled Lily's ears as the implications of their words crashed over her. She jerked her hand away from Elizabeth's touch, her mind reeling. No, she whispered. No, that's impossible. I grew up in foster care. I don't have a family. James, who had been silent until now, spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. Lily, I had no idea. They only told me this morning. That's why I came to find you. Lily turned to him, her eyes blazing. You expect me to believe that? That you had no part in this cruel joke? Richard's face fell, the weight of his actions clearly visible in the slump of his shoulders. It's not a joke, Lily. Your mother, she was a wonderful woman named Rosa Martinez. We met when she was working as a housekeeper for our family. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I paid her to disappear, to never contact me again. Tears began to fall freely down Lily's cheeks as she listened to the sordid tale of her origins. My mother, what happened to her? Elizabeth answered, her voice gentle. She died in childbirth, my dear. The hospital tried to contact Richard, but he had changed all his numbers. By the time we found out, you had already been placed in the foster system. Lily's mind was spinning, trying to reconcile this new information with everything she had believed about herself. But why now? Why are you telling me this now? Richard straightened, a flicker of his usual authority returning to his bearing. When James told us about you, showed us your picture, the resemblance to Rosa was undeniable. We hired a private investigator to confirm our suspicions. Lily, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that we want to make things right. A bitter laugh escaped Lily's lips. Make things right? How? By rejecting me all over again? By sending me that hateful letter? James reached for Lily's hand, but she pulled away. Lily, please. I love you. None of this changes how I feel about you. Lily stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the linoleum floor. None of this changes how you feel. It changes everything, James. I'm your sister. The last word came out as a choked sob. The diner had gone deathly quiet, all pretense of not listening abandoned as the other patrons stared openly at the unfolding drama. Lily felt their eyes on her, pity and curiosity mingling in their gazes. It was too much. Without another word, she turned and fled, pushing past Joe as she ran out into the street. The cool air hit her tear-stained face as she ran, with no destination in mind, just an overwhelming need to escape. Back in the diner, James made to follow her, but Richard's hand on his arm stopped him. "Let her go, son. She needs time to process all of this." Elizabeth dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Oh, Richard, what have we done?" "That poor girl." Richard's face was a mask of regret and determination. "We'll make this right. We have to. She's family." As the Blackwoods sat in stunned silence, the weight of their revelations hanging heavy in the air, Lily ran through the streets of Chicago, her world turned upside down. Everything she had believed about herself, about her place in the world, had been shattered in an instant. She found herself in a small park, collapsing onto a bench as sobs racked her body. The sky opened up, rain beginning to fall as if the heavens themselves were weeping for her pain. As Lily sat there, drenched and shivering, a figure approached. She looked up to see Mrs. Thompson, her elderly neighbor, standing before her with an umbrella. "Oh, my dear girl," Mrs. Thompson said softly, sitting down beside Lily and sheltering them both from the rain. "What's happened?" Lily turned to the older woman, her one constant source of support over the years, and poured out the whole sordid tale. Mrs. Thompson listened without interruption, her wrinkled face a picture of compassion. When Lily finished, Mrs. Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a gentleness that brought fresh tears to Lily's eyes, she spoke. "Lily, my dear, I know this feels like the end of the world right now. But remember what I told you, you are stronger than you know. This doesn't change who you are at your core." Lily wiped her eyes, looking at Mrs. Thompson with desperate hope. "But how can I face them? How can I face James? Everything is ruined." Mrs. Thompson took Lily's hand in her own gnarled one. "Nothing is ruined, child. Changed, yes, but not ruined. You have been given something many in your position would give anything for: answers about your past, a chance to know your family. But they rejected me," Lily protested weakly. "They made a terrible mistake," Mrs. Thompson agreed. "But they're trying to make amends. It won't be easy, and you have every right to be angry and hurt. But don't let that anger rob you of this chance, Lily. You deserve to know where you come from, to understand your history." As Lily listened to Mrs. Thompson's words, she felt a small spark of something ignite within her, not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginnings of understanding. She thought of James, of the love they had shared, now forever changed but not erased. She thought of Richard Blackwood, the father she had never known, and of her mother, Rosa, who had given her life to bring Lily into the world. "What should I do?" Lily asked, her voice small and uncertain. Mrs. Thompson smiled, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. "Well, for starters, I think it's time you showed the Blackwoods exactly what Lily Martinez is made of. They want to make amends? Let them prove it. You hold the power now, my dear. Use it wisely." As the rain began to let up, Lily felt a new resolve settling over her. Mrs. Thompson was right, this wasn't the end of her story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. She would face the Blackwoods on her own terms, demanding the respect and recognition she deserved. Rising from the bench, Lily squared her shoulders. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. I don't know what I'd do without you." The older woman waved her off with a fond smile. "You'd do just fine, my dear. You're a survivor. Now go home, get cleaned up, and face this head on. Show them the strong, beautiful woman I know you to be." As Lily walked home, her mind was already formulating a plan. She would meet with the Blackwoods, but on her own turf. They had invaded her world, now it was time for her to assert her place in theirs. Little did Lily know that across town, in the opulent Blackwood mansion, another drama was unfolding, one that would further complicate the already tangled web of secrets and lies surrounding her true identity. Richard Blackwood sat in his study, a glass of scotch in his trembling hand, as he listened to a voicemail that threatened to unravel everything. "Mr. Blackwood," a gruff voice crackled through the speaker, "I know what really happened to Rosa Martinez. If you don't want the truth to come out, we need to talk. Your daughter's life may depend on it." As the message ended, Richard's face drained of color. The past, it seemed, was not done with them yet. And Lily, just beginning to grapple with her new reality, had no idea of the storm that was about to break over them all. In her small apartment, Lily stood before the mirror, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. She was no longer just Lily Martinez, the waitress from Joe's diner. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, a woman with a past, a future, and a strength she was only beginning to understand. As night fell over Chicago, the stage was set for a showdown that would change the lives of everyone involved. Secrets would be revealed, alliances tested, and the true meaning of family would be redefined. For Lily, James, and the entire Blackwood clan, nothing would ever be the same again. The Blackwood mansion loomed before Lily, its imposing facade a stark reminder of the vast gulf between her world and theirs. She stood at the wrought iron gates, her heart pounding in her chest, as she pressed the intercom button. "Yes," came a crisp voice through the speaker. Lily took a deep breath. "This is Lily Martinez. I'm here to see the Blackwoods." There was a pause, then a soft buzz as the gates swung open. Lily walked up the long driveway, her simple dress and sensible shoes a stark contrast to the manicured lawns and marble fountains that surrounded her. As she reached the front door, it swung open to reveal Elizabeth Blackwood, looking elegant yet anxious in a tailored suit. "Lily, dear," Elizabeth said, her voice wavering slightly. "Please, come in. We've been hoping you'd come." Lily stepped into the grand foyer, momentarily overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding her. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and priceless artworks adorned the walls. It was a world away from her tiny apartment and the bustling diner where she worked. "Where are Richard and James?" Lily asked, her voice steady despite her nerves. Elizabeth gestured towards a door off to the side. "In the study. There, we're all eager to talk with you." As they walked, Elizabeth attempted small talk. "I hope you found the place all right. Perhaps we should have sent a car for you." Lily bit back a sharp retort. Of course they assumed she couldn't manage on her own. Instead, she simply nodded, saving her words for the confrontation to come. The study was a masculine space, all dark wood and leather. Richard Blackwood sat behind an imposing desk, while James paced nervously by the window. Both men looked up as Lily entered, their faces a mix of hope and apprehension. "Lily," James breathed, taking a step towards her before stopping himself. Richard stood, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit down. We have much to discuss." Lily remained standing, her chin held high. "I prefer to stand, thank you. I'm not here for a cozy chat. I want answers." Richard nodded, sinking back into his chair. "Of course. Where would you like to begin?" Lily's eyes blazed with a mixture of anger and determination. "Let's start with why you abandoned my mother. Why you abandoned me." Richard's face crumpled, the weight of his past decisions evident in every line. "I was young, ambitious. When Rosa told me she was pregnant, I panicked. My family had such high expectations, and I was afraid of disappointing them. So you decided to disappoint your child instead? Lily's voice was sharp, cutting. Elizabeth stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch Lily's arm. Lily flinched away, and Elizabeth's hand fell limply to her side. We made a terrible mistake, Elizabeth said softly. We've regretted it every day since. Lily turned to her, eyebrows raised. We? You knew about this too? Elizabeth nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. Richard told me everything shortly after we were married. I encouraged him to forget about it, to focus on our future together. I was wrong, so terribly wrong. James, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Lily, I swear I didn't know any of this until recently. If I had known you were my sister. He trailed off, the word hanging heavily in the air between them. Lily felt a lump form in her throat. Despite everything, her heart ached for James, for the love they had shared and lost. It doesn't matter now, she said, her voice softer than she intended. What's done is done. Richard leaned forward, his eyes pleading. Lily, we want to make this right. We want you to be a part of this family. You're entitled to the Blackwood name, to all that comes with it. Lily laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. The Blackwood name? You mean the name you were so quick to deny me just days ago? The name that comes with expectations so high you'd abandon your own child to protect it? The room fell silent, the weight of Lily's words hanging heavily in the air. Richard looked as though he'd been slapped, while Elizabeth dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. James took a tentative step forward. Lily, please. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. Give us a chance to make this right. Lily turned to him, her heart breaking all over again at the sight of his familiar face. And how exactly do you propose we do that, James? How do we go from lovers to siblings? How do I forgive years of abandonment and rejection? Before anyone could answer, the study door burst open. A man Lily didn't recognize stormed in, his face red with anger. Richard! What the hell is going on here? Richard stood quickly, his face paling. Charles, this isn't a good time. We're in the middle of a family meeting. The man, Charles, laughed derisively. Family meeting? Is that what we're calling it now? Does she know the truth, Richard? The real truth? Lily's head snapped towards Charles, then back to Richard. What is he talking about? What truth? Richard's voice was strained as he addressed Charles. Please, this isn't the time or place for this discussion. Charles ignored him, turning to Lily with a fierce intensity. You must be Lily. I'm Charles Martinez. Your uncle. The room spun around Lily as she processed this new information. My uncle? But how? Charles's eyes softened as he looked at Lily. You look so much like Rosa. My little sister, she deserved so much better than what these people did to her. Elizabeth gasped. Charles, please. We're trying to make amends. Charles rounded on her, his voice rising. Amends? You think you can make amends for what you did? For the lies you've told? Lily felt as though she were watching a tennis match, her head whipping back and forth between Charles and the Blackwoods. Will someone please tell me what's going on? Richard slumped in his chair, defeat written across his face. Lily, there's something we haven't told you. Something about your mother, and about you. James stepped closer to Lily, as if to shield her from whatever was coming. Father, what are you talking about? Richard took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Lily's. Rosa didn't die in childbirth. She was murdered. A collective gasp filled the room. Lily felt her knees go weak, and James quickly guided her to a chair. She sank into it, her mind reeling. Murdered? She whispered. But how? Why? Charles's voice was hard as he answered. Because she knew too much. Because she threatened to expose the Blackwoods for who they really are. Richard held up a hand, his voice strained. It wasn't like that, Charles. We didn't know. I didn't know what my father was capable of. Lily's head snapped up. Your father? What does he have to do with this? Richard's shoulders sagged under the weight of his confession. My father, your grandfather, was involved in some questionable business dealings. Rosa discovered evidence of money laundering, of connections to organized crime. She threatened to go to the authorities if we didn't help her raise you, acknowledge you as a Blackwood. Elizabeth continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard's father, he took matters into his own hands. We didn't know until it was too late. Charles scoffed. And yet you did nothing. You let my sister's killer go free, and you abandoned her child to the system. Lily felt as though she were drowning, each revelation pulling her further under. So my entire life, everything I thought I knew about myself, it's all been a lie? James knelt beside her chair, his face a mask of anguish. Lily, I swear I didn't know any of this. Please believe me. Lily looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. Despite everything, she found herself believing him. I do, she said softly. But it doesn't change anything. She stood abruptly, needing to move, to think. So what happens now? You've told me the truth, or at least, I hope it's the truth this time. What do you expect from me? Richard stood as well, his voice earnest. We want to make this right, Lily. We want you to be a part of this family. To have the life you should have had all along. Charles snorted. A life built on blood money and lies? Is that what you want for her, Richard? Lily held up a hand, silencing them both. What I want, she said, her voice stronger than she felt, is time. Time to process all of this, to figure out what it means for me. She turned to Charles, seeing the pain and anger in his eyes. You're my uncle. You knew my mother. I'd like to know more about her, if you're willing to tell me. Charles's face softened. Of course, Nina. Anything you want to know. Lily nodded, then turned back to the Blackwoods. As for you, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you've done. But I'm willing to listen, to try and understand. But it has to be on my terms. Richard nodded eagerly. Anything, Lily. Whatever you need. I need space, Lily said firmly. I need time to think, to process all of this. And I need the truth, all of it. No more secrets, no more lies. Elizabeth stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Of course, dear. But please, don't shut us out completely. We've only just found you. Lily's gaze swept over the room, taking in the faces of these people who were, by blood if not by choice, her family. I'm not making any promises. But I'm not running away either. I deserve answers, and I intend to get them. As Lily turned to leave, James called out to her. Lily, wait. I know things can never be the same between us. But I hope that someday we can find a way to be in each other's lives. As family. Lily paused at the door, looking back at the man she had loved, now her brother. I hope so too, James. But right now, I need to figure out who Lily Martinez really is. Because she's certainly not who I thought she was this morning. With that, Lily walked out of the study, her head held high despite the turmoil raging inside her. As she made her way through the grand foyer and out into the warm Chicago evening, she felt as though she were leaving more than just the Blackwood mansion behind. She was leaving behind the life she had known, stepping into an uncertain future filled with painful truths and unexpected family ties. Back in the study, the tension was palpable. Charles glared at Richard, years of pent-up anger finally finding an outlet. This isn't over, Blackwood. Rosa deserves justice, and Lily deserves to know everything. Richard nodded wearily. I know. And she will. We'll tell her everything, no matter the consequences. As Charles stormed out, Elizabeth turned to her husband, fear evident in her eyes. Richard, what are we going to do? If this gets out. Richard's face hardened with resolve. We'll face it. Together. It's time we started doing the right thing, no matter the cost. James, still reeling from the revelations, sank into a chair. I can't believe all of this. Lily, she's my sister. And all this time. Elizabeth placed a comforting hand on her son's shoulder. We'll find a way through this, James. As a family. As night fell over Chicago, for people in different parts of the city grappled with the truths that had been revealed. Lily, in her small apartment, stared at old photos, wondering about the mother she had never known. Charles, in his modest home, pulled out a box of Rosa's belongings, preparing to share memories with the niece he had just found. And in the Blackwood mansion, a family faced the daunting task of atoning for past sins and building a new future. Little did they know that the revelations of the day were only the beginning. As Lily delved deeper into her past, she would uncover secrets that would shake the foundations of Chicago's elite society and force everyone involved to confront the true meaning of family, loyalty, and redemption. In the coming days, Lily would find herself navigating a world she had never imagined, a world of old money, hidden agendas, and dangerous secrets. She would be tested in ways she never thought possible, forced to confront not only her newfound family but also her own identity and values. As she lay in bed that night, Lily's mind raced with questions. Who was she really? A Martinez or a Blackwood? A simple waitress or the heir to a powerful dynasty? And most importantly, what would she do with the truth she had uncovered? One thing was certain, Lily Martinez was no longer the same woman who had walked into Joe's diner that morning. She was stronger, more determined, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The poor woman rejected by her lover's family was gone, replaced by a woman who would demand answers, seek justice, and forge her own path in a world that had tried to deny her very existence. As she drifted off to sleep, Lily made a silent vow to herself and to the mother she had never known. She would uncover the whole truth, no matter the cost. And in doing so, she would redefine what it meant to be a Blackwood, a Martinez, and most importantly, what it meant to be Lily. The stage was set for a drama that would captivate Chicago's high society and change the lives of everyone involved. Alliances would be formed and broken, long-buried secrets would come to light, and at the center of it all, a young woman would discover the true strength of her character and the power of her own voice. As dawn broke over the city, Lily Martinez Blackwood prepared to face a new day and a new reality. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with unexpected twists and turns. But for the first time in her life, Lily felt ready to face whatever came her way. She was no longer alone in the world, for better or worse, she had a family. And she was determined to uncover the truth about her past. No matter where it might lead her. Little did Lily know that across town, in a dimly lit office, a figure hunched over a computer, piecing together fragments of a story that would blow the Blackwood scandal wide open. The truth about Rosa Martinez's death was about to become front-page news, and Lily would find herself at the center of a media storm that would test her newfound strength to its very limits. As Chicago awakened to a new day, the wheels of fate were already in motion. The poor woman rejected by her lover's family was about to become the talk of the town, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun had barely risen over Chicago's skyline when Lily's phone began to buzz incessantly. Groggily, she reached for it, her eyes widening as she saw the flood of notifications. Missed calls from James, text messages from unknown numbers, and a barrage of news alerts all vied for her attention. With trembling fingers, she opened the top news story, and her heart nearly stopped. Blackwood family scandal exposed, illegitimate heir and murder cover-up rocks Chicago elite. Lily's face stared back at her from the screen, an old photo from her social media account now plastered across every major news outlet in the city. The article detailed the sordid tale of her parentage, the alleged murder of her mother, and the Blackwood family's decades-long cover-up. As she scrolled through the article, her phone buzzed again. It was a text from James. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I don't know how this got out. Please, let me come over. We need to talk." Before she could respond, another message came through, this time from an unknown number. "Ms. Martinez, this is Andrea Chin from the Chicago Tribune. We'd love to get your statement on the Blackwood family scandal. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Lily's head spun. How had this happened? Who could have leaked the story? As if in answer to her unspoken question, her phone rang. The caller ID read Charles Martinez. Lily, her uncle's voice was urgent when she answered. "Have you seen the news?" Yes, Lily managed, still trying to process the situation. "Did you do this, Charles?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Not directly," Charles admitted. "But I may have spoken to someone who, look, can we meet? There's more you need to know." Lily agreed to meet Charles at a small cafe near her apartment. As she got dressed, her mind raced with the implications of what was happening. Her life, which had already been turned upside down, was now fodder for public consumption. She was no longer just Lily Martinez, waitress at Joe's Diner. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, the center of Chicago's biggest scandal in years. As she stepped out of her apartment building, Lily was momentarily blinded by a barrage of camera flashes. A small crowd of reporters had gathered, shouting questions as she tried to make her way to the street. "Ms. Martinez, how long have you known about your connection to the Blackwoods? Is it true that your mother was murdered? Do you plan to claim your inheritance?" Lily pushed through the crowd, her heart pounding. This was a nightmare. How was she supposed to navigate this new reality? Just as she thought she might be overwhelmed, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "All right, that's enough. Let the lady through." Joe, her boss from the diner, appeared at her side, his burly frame creating a path through the sea of reporters. He ushered Lily into a waiting cab, climbing in beside her. "Joe," Lily breathed, relief washing over her. "How did you know?" Joe's kind face creased with concern. "It's all over the news, kid. I figured you might need some backup." "Where to?" Lily gave the driver the address of the cafe, then turned to Joe, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what to do, Joe. Everything's happening so fast." Joe patted her hand comfortingly. "You'll figure it out, Lily. You're stronger than you know. And you've got people in your corner, don't forget that." As they pulled up to the cafe, Lily saw Charles waiting outside, his face grim. She turned to Joe. "Thank you. For everything." Joe nodded. "Anytime, kid." And listen, whatever happens with all this Blackwood business, you've always got a place at the diner. Don't forget where you came from. Lily felt a lump form in her throat at Joe's words. With everything changing so rapidly, it was comforting to know that some things, like Joe's unwavering support, remained constant. As she exited the cab, Charles hurried to her side, guiding her into the cafe before more photographers could spot them. They settled into a secluded booth, and Charles wasted no time in getting to the point. Lily, I'm sorry about all this. I never meant for it to blow up like this, he began, his face etched with worry. Lily's eyes narrowed. But you did mean for it to come out, didn't you? You went to the press. Charles sighed heavily. Not exactly. I've been in touch with an investigative journalist for months, sharing what I knew about Rose's death. I thought if we could build a case, we could finally get justice for your mother. And for yourself? Lily couldn't keep the accusation out of her voice. Did you think about what this would do to me? Charles had the grace to look ashamed. I'm sorry, Lily. I was so focused on exposing the Blackwoods, on making them pay. I didn't consider the consequences for you. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed with another message from James. Lily, please. Father's calling a press conference. We need you here. Lily showed the message to Charles, her mind racing. What should I do? Charles's eyes hardened. You don't owe them anything, Lily. They've lied to you your entire life. But even as he said it, Lily felt a strange pull. The Blackwoods were her family, for better or worse. And if they were going to address this publicly, shouldn't she be there? Shouldn't she have a say in how her story was told? I have to go, she said, standing abruptly. I need to hear what they have to say. Charles looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Lily's face stopped him. All right, he conceded. But I'm coming with you. You shouldn't face them alone. As they made their way to the Blackwood mansion, Lily's phone continued to buzz with messages and calls. The story was spreading like wildfire, with new details and speculations emerging by the minute. When they arrived, the scene outside the Blackwood estate was chaos. Reporters and camera crews jostled for position, while curious onlookers strained to catch a glimpse of the unfolding drama. James was waiting for them at the gate, his face a mask of tension and relief. Lily, thank God you're here. We're about to start the press conference. Father, he wants you to be part of it. Lily felt a surge of panic. Part of it? James, I don't know if I can. James took her hand, his touch both familiar and strange in this new context. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. But please, stand with us. Show them that we're facing this as a family. Charles bristled at James's words. She's not obligated to do anything for you people. Lily squeezed Charles's arm reassuringly. It's okay, Uncle Charles. I need to do this. For myself. As they made their way into the mansion, Lily felt as though she were walking in a dream. Just days ago, she had been a simple waitress, and now she was about to face the world as a Blackwood. Richard and Elizabeth were waiting in the foyer, both looking years older than they had the day before. Elizabeth rushed to Lily, enveloping her in a hesitant embrace. Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry about all of this, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Richard stepped forward, his face grave. Lily, I know we have no right to ask anything of you. But we're about to face the press, and we'd like to present a united front. Will you stand with us? Lily looked at the faces around her, Richard and Elizabeth, her biological father and his wife, James, her former lover turned brother, and Charles, the uncle she'd only just met but who represented her mother's side of the family. In that moment, she realized that whatever she decided would shape not only her future but the future of everyone in this room. Taking a deep breath, Lily squared her shoulders. "I'll stand with you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "But on one condition. We tell the whole truth. No more lies, no more cover-ups." Richard nodded solemnly. "You have my word." As they prepared to face the sea of reporters waiting outside, Lily felt a strange calm settle over her. This was her story, her life, and it was time for her to take control of the narrative. The bright lights of the cameras were blinding as the Blackwood family stepped out onto the front steps of the mansion. Richard took his place at the podium, with Elizabeth at his side. James and Lily stood just behind them, a united front despite the tension that crackled between them. Charles hung back, his presence a silent reminder of the past that had brought them all to this moment. Richard cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We've called this press conference to address the rumors and allegations that have been circulating in the media." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd before continuing. "I want to start by saying that much of what you've heard is true. 25 years ago, I fathered a child with a woman named Rosa Martinez. That child, my daughter, is Lily Martinez." A murmur rippled through the crowd of reporters. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the moment for posterity. "What I did next is something I will regret for the rest of my life," Richard continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I turned my back on Rosa and our child. I allowed fear and ambition to override my moral obligations. And in doing so, I set in motion a chain of events that led to tragedy." Elizabeth stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on her husband's arm. Richard drew strength from her touch and pressed on. "Rosa Martinez was indeed murdered, not in childbirth as we previously claimed, but by individuals who sought to protect the Blackwood family's reputation at any cost. While I was not directly responsible for her death, my actions and my silence in the years that followed make me complicit." The crowd of reporters erupted into a frenzy of questions. Richard held up a hand, silencing them. "I know you all have many questions, and we will address them in time. But first, I want to say this: Lily Martinez is my daughter, and she is a Blackwood. We welcome her into our family with open arms and deep remorse for the years we've lost." He turned to Lily, gesturing for her to join him at the podium. Lily hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Lily," Richard said, his voice carrying across the now silent crowd, "I know we can never make up for the past. But if you'll allow us, we want to be a part of your future. We want to make amends, not just to you, but to the memory of your mother." Lily looked out at the sea of faces, all waiting with bated breath for her response. In that moment, she felt the weight of her mother's legacy, of the Blackwood name, and of her own identity all converging. Taking a deep breath, Lily spoke, her voice clear and strong. "My entire life, I've wondered about my family, about where I came from. I never imagined I would find answers like this." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I'm still processing everything that's happened, everything I've learned. I don't know what the future holds, or what my relationship with the Blackwood family will be. But I do know this: I am Lily Martinez, daughter of Rosa Martinez. That will never change, no matter what name I might carry." Lily turned to Richard, her eyes meeting his. "I appreciate your willingness to acknowledge the truth, Mr. Blackwood. But true amends will take more than words. It will take action. Justice for my mother, and a commitment to using the Blackwood resources and influence for good." Richard nodded solemnly. "You have my word, Lily. We will do whatever it takes to make this right." As the press conference concluded, Lily felt a strange mix of emotions washing over her. Relief at having the truth out in the open, anxiety about what the future might hold, and a deep, aching sadness for the mother she had never known. The days that followed were a whirlwind of media attention, legal meetings, and emotional conversations. Lily found herself thrust into a world she barely understood, navigating the complexities of high society while trying to stay true to her roots. James, struggling with his own conflicted feelings, became an unexpected ally. Though their romantic relationship was over, a new bond began to form, one of siblinghood and shared experience. Charles, initially skeptical of the Blackwoods' intentions, slowly began to see the sincerity in their efforts to make amends. He shared stories of Rosa with Lily, helping her piece together the puzzle of her mother's life. And through it all, Lily found strength she never knew she had. She stood up to board members who questioned her place in the company, charmed socialites who tried to intimidate her, and never lost sight of who she was at her core. 1 month after the press conference, Lily stood in front of Joe's diner, a bittersweet smile on her face. She was here to say goodbye, not forever, but to close one chapter of her life before beginning another. Joe enveloped her in a bear hug, his gruff voice thick with emotion. "You take care of yourself out there in that big, fancy world, kid. And remember, you've always got a home here." Lily hugged him back fiercely. "I could never forget, Joe. Thank you for everything." As she turned to leave, Lily caught sight of her reflection in the diner's window. She barely recognized the confident young woman staring back at her. So much had changed in such a short time, but at her core, she was still Lily, stronger now, wiser, but still the same compassionate soul who had waited tables and dreamed of a better life. With one last look at the diner, Lily stepped into the waiting car, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She was no longer just the poor woman rejected by her lover's family. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, a woman who had faced adversity head-on and emerged stronger for it. As the car pulled away, Lily felt a sense of peace wash over her. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: her mother would be proud of the woman she had become. Little did Lily know that her journey was far from over. As she embarked on this new chapter of her life, forces were already in motion that would test her newfound strength and resolve. The Blackwood Empire was built on more than just old money. There were secrets still buried, deals made in the shadows that were about to come to light. And at the center of it all was Lily, the unexpected heir who would soon find herself navigating a world of corporate intrigue, family loyalty, and personal discovery. The poor woman who had been rejected was gone, replaced by a force to be reckoned with, a woman determined to honor her mother's memory, forge her own path, and redefine what it meant to be a Blackwood. As Chicago's elite watched with bated breath, Lily Martinez Blackwood prepared to take her place in a world she never imagined she'd be part of. The stage was set for a drama that would captivate the city and change the lives of everyone involved. The sun set on another day in Chicago, casting long shadows across the city's skyline. In her new office at Blackwood Enterprises, Lily stood by the window, watching the play of light and shadow. She thought about the twists and turns that had brought her here, about the mother she never knew, and about the family she was just beginning to understand. With a deep breath, she turned back to her desk, where a stack of files awaited her attention. These weren't just any files, they contained the results of the investigation into Rosa's death, as well as details of some of the Blackwood family's more questionable business dealings. As she settled into her chair, Lily felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had a legacy to reckon with, not just the Blackwood legacy, but her mother's as well. And she was determined to do right by both. Little did she know that across town, in a dimly lit room, a group of people were meeting to discuss the Blackwood situation. Their conversation, if overheard, would have sent a chill down Lily's spine. For not everyone was happy about the new heir's rise to power, and some were willing to go to great lengths to protect their interests. As night fell over Chicago, the pieces were already in motion for the next act in this unfolding drama. Lily Martinez Blackwood, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon, continued to pore over the files on her desk. A soft knock on her office door interrupted her concentration. Looking up, she saw James standing in the doorway, his face a mixture of concern and determination. "Lily," he said, stepping into the room, "we need to talk. There's something you should know." Lily gestured for him to sit, her brow furrowing at his serious tone. "What is it, James?" James ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit she had come to recognize. "I've been doing some digging of my own, trying to understand more about what happened to your mother. And I've uncovered something disturbing." Lily leaned forward, her heart racing. "Tell me." "It's about grandfather," James began, his voice low. "I don't think he acted alone in what happened to Rosa. There are indications that he was working with someone else, someone who's still in a position of power within the company." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "Who?" Before James could answer, the office door burst open. Richard Blackwood strode in, his face pale and drawn. "Lily, James, thank God you're both here. We have a situation." Lily stood, alarm bells ringing in her head. "What's going on?" Richard's eyes darted between his two children, fear evident in his gaze. "I've just received a threat. Someone knows about the evidence we've been gathering, about the true extent of the company's questionable dealings. They're demanding we bury it all, or they'll..." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. James stepped forward, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. "Or they'll what, Dad?" Richard's voice was barely above a whisper. "Or they'll finish what they started with Rosa." The room fell silent as the implications of Richard's words sank in. Lily felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath her feet. After everything that had happened, after all the truths that had come to light, there was still more danger lurking in the shadows. "Who?" Lily demanded, her voice sharp with fear and anger. "Who's behind this?" Richard shook his head. "I don't know." The message was anonymous, but it had to come from someone with intimate knowledge of the company's history. James and Lily exchanged a look, both thinking of their earlier conversation. "Dad," James said slowly, "we think we might have an idea of who could be involved." As they filled Richard in on their suspicions, Lily's mind raced. She had thought that uncovering the truth about her past would be the end of it, that she could focus on building a new future with her newfound family. But it seemed that the past wasn't done with them yet. "What do we do?" she asked, looking between Richard and James. "We can't just give in to their demands. We can't let them get away with what they've done." Richard's face hardened with resolve. "No, we can't. We've spent too long hiding from the truth, making compromises to protect ourselves. It's time we face this head-on." James nodded in agreement. "We need to gather all the evidence we have, present it to the board and the authorities. It's the only way to cut out this cancer once and for all." Lily felt a surge of pride for her newfound family's determination. But a nagging worry still gnawed at her. But what about the threat? If we move against them, won't we be putting ourselves in danger? Richard reached out, taking Lily's hand in his. "We'll take precautions. I'll hire additional security for all of us. But Lily, you need to understand, this fight, it's not just about us anymore. It's about justice for your mother, and for anyone else who's been hurt by the company's actions over the years." Lily squeezed her father's hand, feeling the weight of her mother's memory and the responsibility of her new position. "You're right. We have to do this. For Mom, for ourselves, and for the future of the company." As the three of them began to formulate a plan, Lily couldn't help but marvel at how much her life had changed. Just weeks ago, she had been a waitress struggling to make ends meet. Now, she was at the center of a corporate and family drama that could reshape the landscape of Chicago's business world. But through it all, through the fear and uncertainty, Lily felt a strength she had never known before. She was no longer alone. She had a family, complicated and flawed as they might be, standing with her. As the night wore on and their plans took shape, Lily found herself looking out the window at the Chicago skyline once more. The city lights twinkled like stars, a reminder of the world beyond these walls, beyond the drama unfolding within the Blackwood family. She thought of Joe and the diner, of Mrs. Thompson and her tiny apartment. She thought of her mother, Rosa, whose spirit seemed to guide her even now. And she thought of the future, uncertain and fraught with danger, but also filled with possibility. Turning back to Richard and James, Lily felt a sense of resolve settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets still lurked in the shadows, she would face them head-on. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, daughter of Rosa Martinez and Richard Blackwood, sister to James, heir to a complicated legacy. And she was ready to fight for justice, for truth, and for the family she had only just begun to know. As dawn broke over Chicago, casting a golden glow across the city, Lily, Richard, and James emerged from the office. Their plan was set, their resolve firm. The next few days would be crucial, filled with secret meetings, clandestine evidence gathering, and careful preparations. The stage was set for a showdown that would shake the foundations of Chicago's business world and test the bonds of the newly formed Martinez Blackwood family. As they parted ways, each heading home to grab a few hours of sleep before the storm broke, Lily felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. She was no longer the poor woman rejected by her lover's family. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman on a mission to uncover the truth and right the wrongs of the past. And as she stepped into the early morning light, Lily Martinez Blackwood was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did she know that the greatest test of her strength, her loyalty, and her newfound family bonds was yet to come. The secrets buried in the Blackwood past were deeper and darker than any of them could have imagined, and bringing them to light would require sacrifices none of them were prepared for. But that was a battle for another day. For now, as the city awakened to a new dawn, Lily allowed herself a moment of hope. Whatever the future held, she would face it with courage, with determination, and with the strength of her mother's memory to guide her. The poor woman rejected by her lover's family had transformed into a beacon of strength and resilience. And her story was far from over. The next few days passed in a blur of clandestine meetings, hushed phone calls, and mounting tension. Lily, James, and Richard worked tirelessly to gather evidence and build their case against the corruption within Blackwood Enterprises. As they delved deeper into the company's past, the web of deceit and criminal activity they uncovered left them reeling. On the third day of their investigation, Lily found herself in a dimly lit parking garage, her heart pounding as she waited for her contact to arrive. She had received an anonymous tip, promising crucial information about her mother's death. Despite the risks, she knew she had to follow every lead. A car approached, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Lily tensed, her hand clutching the pepper spray in her pocket. The car stopped, and a figure emerged. To Lily's surprise, it was Elizabeth Blackwood. "Elizabeth?" Lily gasped. "What are you doing here?" Elizabeth's usually perfectly coiffed appearance was disheveled, her eyes wild with fear and determination. "Lily, thank God you came. We don't have much time. There's something you need to know, something I've kept hidden for far too long." Before Lily could respond, the sound of screeching tires echoed through the garage. Two black SUVs roared into view, blocking their exit. Men in dark suits poured out, their intentions clearly hostile. "Run!" Elizabeth screamed, grabbing Lily's arm and pulling her towards the stairwell. They raced up the stairs, the sound of heavy footsteps close behind them. Lily's mind raced. Who were these men? What did Elizabeth know that was worth killing for? As they burst out onto the roof, Lily's phone buzzed. It was James. "Lily, where are you? We've got a problem, someone's broken into the office. All our evidence is gone." Lily's blood ran cold. "James, listen to me. We're being attacked. Elizabeth is with me. Send help to the Riverside parking garage, now." The line went dead as one of their pursuers caught up, knocking the phone from Lily's hand. She turned to face him, adrenaline surging through her veins. All those self-defense classes she'd taken after late-night diner shifts were about to be put to the test. As the man lunged for her, Lily sidestepped, using his momentum to send him stumbling past her. Elizabeth, showing a strength Lily never knew she possessed, swung her heavy designer handbag, catching another attacker squarely in the face. But they were outnumbered and outmatched. As more men poured onto the roof, Lily and Elizabeth found themselves backed against the edge, a 4-story drop behind them. "Lily," Elizabeth panted, her eyes never leaving their attackers, "if we don't make it out of this, you need to know, your mother, she..." Before Elizabeth could finish, a deafening explosion rocked the building. Smoke billowed up from the lower floors, and their attackers turned in confusion. In the chaos, Lily heard a familiar voice shouting her name. Charles Martinez burst through the roof access door, a fire extinguisher in his hands. He sprayed their attackers, creating a smokescreen. "This way," he yelled, gesturing towards a maintenance ladder leading to the adjacent building. As they climbed to safety, sirens wailed in the distance. They had escaped, but Lily knew this was far from over. Her mother's killer was still out there, and now they knew Lily was getting close to the truth. Hours later, huddled in a safe house Charles had arranged, Lily, Elizabeth, and Charles tried to piece together what had happened. "How did you know where to find us?" Lily asked her uncle, still in disbelief over his timely rescue. Charles's face was grim. "I've been keeping tabs on Blackwood Enterprises ever since Rosa died. When I saw unusual activity around the company and heard whispers of a power struggle, I knew you'd be in danger." Elizabeth, who had been silent since their escape, finally spoke. "It's time I told you both everything. Lily, your mother, she wasn't just an innocent victim. She was working undercover, investigating the Blackwood family's connections to organized crime." Lily felt as though the wind had been knocked out of her. "What? But how? Why?" Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "Rosa was an FBI agent. She got close to Richard, to all of us, as part of her mission. But somewhere along the way, it became real. She fell in love with Richard, and when she found out she was pregnant with you, she wanted to leave it all behind." The revelations kept coming. Elizabeth explained how she had discovered Rosa's true identity, how they had become unlikely allies in the fight to bring down the criminal elements within the Blackwood Empire. But someone had found out, and Rosa paid the ultimate price. "I've spent the last 25 years trying to uncover the truth, to finish what Rosa started," Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. "Richard doesn't know. I've had to keep him in the dark to protect him, to protect all of us." As Lily processed this earth-shattering information, her phone buzzed with a text from James, "Safe. Evidence recovered. But Dad's missing. Need to meet ASAP." The stakes had never been higher. Lily realized that she was at the center of a decades-long conspiracy, one that had claimed her mother's life and now threatened everything and everyone she held dear. With renewed determination, Lily stood. "We need to end this, once and for all. For my mother, for Richard, for all of us. It's time to bring down whoever's behind this, no matter the cost." Elizabeth and Charles nodded in agreement. As they began to formulate a plan, Lily felt the weight of her mother's legacy settling on her shoulders. She was no longer just fighting for her place in the Blackwood family, she was fighting to fulfill her mother's mission, to bring justice to those who had torn her family apart before she even had a chance to know it. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Lily, James, Elizabeth, and Charles worked tirelessly, piecing together the evidence they had gathered with the new information Elizabeth provided. They uncovered a complex network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and blackmail that reached to the highest levels of Chicago's business and political world. At the center of it all was a name that made Lily's blood run cold: Harold Blackwood, Richard's uncle and the true power behind Blackwood Enterprises. He had been pulling the strings all along, using the company as a front for his illegal activities and eliminating anyone who got in his way, including Rosa Martinez. As they prepared to take their evidence to the authorities, Lily received a video call from an unknown number. With trepidation, she answered and found herself face to face with Harold Blackwood himself. The elderly man's face was a mask of cold fury. "Ms. Martinez, or should I say, Ms. Blackwood? I must admit, you've proven to be as troublesome as your mother. I had hoped we could resolve this amicably, but you've forced my hand." The camera panned, revealing Richard Blackwood bound and gagged in the background. Lily's heart raced as Harold continued, "You have 1 hour to bring me all the evidence you've gathered and surrender yourself. Otherwise, your father pays the price for your interference." As the call ended, Lily felt a mix of fear and rage coursing through her. She turned to the others, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "We need a new plan. I'm not letting anyone else die because of this." James stepped forward, his face set with determination. "We're in this together, Lily. Harold's not going to win, not this time." With the clock ticking, they formulated a daring rescue plan. Elizabeth used her society connections to organize a last-minute charity gala at the Blackwood mansion, the perfect cover for their operation. Charles reached out to his FBI contacts, ensuring that help would be on standby when they needed it. As Lily prepared to face Harold, she found a moment alone with James. The air between them was charged with unspoken emotions, the lingering remnants of their past relationship, the newfound bond of siblinghood, and the shared determination to save their father and honor Lily's mother's memory. "James," Lily said softly, "if anything happens to me." James cut her off, pulling her into a fierce hug. "Don't. We're both walking out of this, Lily. We're family, and family sticks together." As they embraced, Lily felt a surge of strength. She was no longer the poor, rejected woman she had been just weeks ago. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, daughter of an FBI agent and a business tycoon, sister to James, and heir to a legacy of both crime and justice. And she was ready to fight. The Blackwood mansion was a glittering spectacle as Chicago's elite gathered for the hastily arranged gala. Lily moved through the crowd, her designer gown concealing a wire and a small weapon. Her eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Harold Blackwood holding court near the grand staircase. As she approached him, Lily felt a lifetime of emotions surging within her: grief for the mother she never knew, anger at the years of deception, and a fierce determination to see justice done. Harold's eyes glittered with malice as he saw her approach. "Ah, Ms. Martinez. So good of you to join us. Shall we discuss our business in private?" Lily nodded, her voice steady. "Lead the way, Mr. Blackwood." As they ascended the stairs, Lily caught James's eye across the room. He nodded almost imperceptibly, everything was in place. Now it was up to Lily to see their plan through and finally uncover the whole truth about her past and her family's legacy. Little did she know that the next few hours would change everything, pushing her to her limits and forcing her to confront not just Harold Blackwood, but the very foundations of her own identity. The final showdown was about to begin, and the stakes had never been higher. As Lily followed Harold into his study, she steeled herself for what was to come. The poor woman who had been rejected by her lover's family was gone. In her place stood a formidable adversary, ready to face the demons of her past and fight for her future. The door closed behind them with an ominous click, and Lily found herself face to face with the man responsible for her mother's death and a lifetime of secrets and lies. Harold Blackwood's cold eyes bore into her, a slight smirk playing on his lips. "Well, my dear," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth, "shall we discuss the terms of your surrender?" Lily's chin lifted defiantly. "I'm not here to surrender, Harold. I'm here to end this, once and for all." As their confrontation began, the gala continued downstairs, a glittering facade hiding the life and death struggle taking place just above. The fate of the Blackwood Empire, and of Lily herself, hung in the balance as 2 generations of secrets and lies finally came to a head. The night was far from over, and the greatest challenges and revelations were yet to come. The study of Harold Blackwood was a testament to old money and power. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, and the subtle scent of expensive cigars created an atmosphere of intimidation. But Lily Martinez Blackwood stood her ground, her eyes never leaving the cold gaze of the man who had orchestrated her mother's death. "You're either very brave or very foolish, my dear," Harold said, moving behind his massive desk. "Did you really think you could take on the entire Blackwood Empire and win?" Lily's voice was steady as she replied, "I'm not here to take on an empire, Harold. I'm here for the truth and for justice." Harold's laugh was devoid of humor. "Justice? In this world, justice is for those with the power to define it. Your mother learned that lesson the hard way." At the mention of her mother, Lily felt a surge of anger. "Tell me what really happened to her. I deserve to know." For a moment, a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, passed over Harold's face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual mask of cold calculation. "Rosa Martinez was a threat," he said matter-of-factly. "She uncovered things she shouldn't have, asked questions better left unasked. When she refused to be bought off, well, accidents can happen to anyone." Lily's fists clenched at her sides. "It wasn't an accident. You had her killed." Harold shrugged, the gesture chillingly casual. "Semantics, my dear. The point is, she's gone, and you do well to remember that the same fate awaits those who cross me." As if on cue, a side door opened, and 2 burly men dragged in a bound and gagged Richard Blackwood. His eyes widened when he saw Lily, a mixture of fear and pleading in his gaze. Harold gestured to Richard. "Now, let's discuss terms. You hand over all the evidence you've gathered, sign over your rights to the Blackwood fortune, and disappear. In return, your father lives, and you get to walk away. It's more than your mother was offered." Lily's mind raced. She needed to buy time to keep Harold talking until their plan could unfold. "And if I refuse?" Harold's smile was cold. "Then Richard here pays the price for your stubbornness. And believe me, my dear, that's just the beginning." As Lily appeared to contemplate her options, her hand slowly moved to her earring, a seemingly nervous gesture that was, in fact, a signal to James and the others waiting below. "Before I make my decision," Lily said carefully, "I want to know everything. About my mother, about the company's illegal activities, all of it." Harold raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by what he perceived as a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. "Very well. Consider it a history lesson, one you won't live long enough to share." As Harold began to speak, detailing years of corruption, money laundering, and worse, Lily surreptitiously pressed a button on her bracelet, activating the recording device hidden within. "It all started with your grandfather, you know," Harold said, warming to his subject. "He had vision, but he lacked the nerve to do what was necessary. That's where I came in. Together, we built an empire, not just in business, but in the shadows where real power resides." Lily listened, her horror growing with each revelation. The Blackwood name, which she had only recently embraced, was built on a foundation of crime and betrayal. And then came your mother, Harold continued, his voice hardening. Brilliant, beautiful Rosa. She fooled us all, even your father. By the time we realized she was FBI, it was almost too late. Richard, still bound, made a muffled sound of protest. Harold shot him a look of disdain before continuing. She had evidence that could have brought us all down. Your father, the lovesick fool, wanted to turn himself in, to make things right. Harold's voice dripped with sarcasm. I couldn't allow that. So, I made a choice, the Empire or Rosa. It wasn't a difficult decision. Lily felt tears pricking at her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't give Harold the satisfaction of seeing her cry. And all these years, you've just continued on, as if nothing happened? Harold smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. My dear, that's the secret to success. You do what needs to be done, and you never look back. Now, I've indulged your curiosity. It's time for you to make your choice. Before Lily could respond, the study door burst open. James rushed in, followed by Elizabeth and a team of FBI agents. It's over, Uncle Harold, James declared. We've heard everything. Harold's face contorted with rage. He lunged for a drawer in his desk, but Lily was faster. She tackled him, using the self-defense moves she learned years ago. They crashed to the floor, struggling for control. In the chaos that followed, shots were fired. Lily felt a searing pain in her shoulder but didn't let go. She couldn't let Harold escape, not when they were so close to justice. As the FBI agents swarmed the room, Lily found herself face to face with Harold. His eyes, once so cold and confident, now held a glimmer of fear. You're just like her, he spat. Rosa would be proud. Those were the last words Harold Blackwood ever spoke. As the agents pulled him away, the weight of his crimes finally caught up to him. He clutched his chest, gasping, and collapsed. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Lily found herself sitting in an ambulance, a blanket draped over her shoulders as a paramedic tended to her wound. The Blackwood mansion, once a symbol of power and prestige, was now a crime scene, swarming with FBI agents and local police. James sat beside her, his face a mixture of relief and concern. Are you okay? He asked softly. Lily nodded, wincing slightly as the paramedic cleaned her wound. I will be. How's Dad? Shaken up, but he'll be all right, James replied. Lily, what you did in there, it was incredible. You've saved this family, in more ways than one. Before Lily could respond, Richard approached, looking years older than he had just hours before. He knelt in front of Lily, tears in his eyes. My darling girl, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Can you ever forgive me? Lily looked at her father, the man who had rejected her, then embraced her, and now knelt before her seeking absolution. She thought of her mother, of the sacrifice she had made, and of the legacy she had left behind. It's not just about forgiveness, Dad, Lily said gently. It's about moving forward, about making things right. We have a lot of work to do. Richard nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Together, he promised. We'll do it together. As the night wore on, Lily found moments to reconnect with the others who had played crucial roles in her journey. Elizabeth, who had carried the burden of Rosa's secret for so long, embraced Lily with tears in her eyes. Your mother would be so proud of you, she whispered. Charles, his gruff exterior softened by the night's events, squeezed Lily's uninjured shoulder. You did good, kid. Rosa's watching over you, I know it. Even Joe from the diner made an appearance, having heard about the drama on the news. "I always knew you were destined for great things," he said with a wink. "But don't forget about us little people, yeah?" As dawn broke over Chicago, casting a golden glow across the city, Lily stood at the entrance of the Blackwood mansion. The past 24 hours had changed everything, yet she felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, daughter of Rosa Martinez and Richard Blackwood. She carried within her the strength of her mother's conviction and the resilience forged by years of struggle. The poor woman who had been rejected was gone, replaced by a force of nature who had faced her past and emerged victorious. In the weeks and months that followed, Lily worked tirelessly to reshape Blackwood Enterprises. With Richard's support and James's help, she rooted out the remaining corruption and set the company on a new path, one of ethical business practices and social responsibility. The story of Rosa Martinez and the Blackwood scandal became national news. Lily found herself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a hero who had exposed decades of corruption. But for Lily, the real victory was in honoring her mother's memory and building a legacy she could be proud of. She established the Rosa Martinez Foundation, dedicated to supporting undercover law enforcement officers and their families. The foundation became her passion project, a way to ensure that no other child would grow up not knowing the truth about their parents' sacrifice. As for her relationship with the Blackwoods, it was a work in progress. Richard, determined to make amends, threw himself into being the father he should have been all along. James, no longer burdened by the secret of their shared parentage, became Lily's closest confidant and ally in reshaping the family business. Elizabeth, freed from the weight of the secrets she had carried for so long, found a new purpose in supporting Lily's foundation work. And Charles, ever the protective uncle, became a constant presence in Lily's life, sharing stories of Rosa and helping Lily connect with her Mexican heritage. 1 year after the night that had changed everything, Lily stood at her mother's grave. It was a simple headstone in a quiet corner of a Chicago cemetery, but to Lily, it was sacred ground. She placed a bouquet of Rosa's favorite flowers and knelt, tracing the letters of her mother's name. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I hope you can see what we've accomplished. Your sacrifice wasn't in vain. We've made things right, just like you wanted." As she spoke, Lily felt a warm breeze caress her face. For a moment, just a moment, she could have sworn she heard her mother's voice on the wind, proud, loving, and free. Rising to her feet, Lily took a deep breath. The journey that had begun with rejection and heartbreak had led her to this moment, a moment of truth, of justice, and of a legacy redeemed. As she walked away from the grave, Lily's phone buzzed with messages. There was work to be done, a company to run, a foundation to manage. But now, she faced each challenge with the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The poor woman rejected by her lover's family had become a beacon of hope, a force for change, and a testament to the power of truth and perseverance. Lily Martinez Blackwood strode into her future, carrying with her the love of her mother, the support of her newfound family, and the strength that comes from facing one's demons and emerging victorious. As the sun set on another day in Chicago, Lily paused for a moment, looking out over the city she now helped shape. She thought of the twists and turns that had brought her to this point, of the love she had lost and found, and of the truth that had set her free. With a smile, she turned back to her waiting car. There were still battles to be fought, wrongs to be righted, and a legacy to be built. But now, Lily knew she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. For she was no longer defined by rejection or by the Blackwood name alone. She was Lily Martinez Blackwood, daughter of Rosa and Richard, sister to James, and architect of her own destiny. And her story? It was only just beginning.